Hey, welcome back, everybody. My guest today is Toby York, and he's not your stereotypical, we'll call him an accounting lecturer, an accounting instructor over in the UK at Middlesex University. Toby looks at the way accounting is taught. We need some work to do to kind of clean it up so the students can have a better understanding and of what we're trying to communicate and what they can do with the power of accounting, as well as businesses, business managers who don't have that accounting background. But first and foremost, happy afternoon to you. I think it's like 3:14 in the UK, what's 9:14 here. And nope, that was 6 hours. It's 2:14.
It's just
I could,
coming up to 2:15.
yeah, I could tell by your eyes you would no, you don't know your time zones, Pete. We're five,
Not that it
not
matters.
six. But thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be on my podcast today, Toby.
Well, thank you for having me, Peter. It's a delight to be here.
We go back about 2 months, formally meeting. We've met kind of through the color accounting sphere, and I've heard your name nauseous amounts of time from everybody there, just singing your praises and loving
Did you say
everything that you do.
nauseous amounts of time? You did. Okay.
I did just for a little humor, for a little laugh, and we were at this was in a course and in a group, and after hearing you in this, I just came fascinated because you get it. Um, you get the fact that the way we teach accounting to non-accountants in the business world and non-accountants at the university level, it's like we're trying to make more CPAs. So, but I get ahead of myself. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with me.
It's a pleasure.
And I think I just did that twice. That's okay. I'm just happy that you're here, Toby.
Me too. I'm delighted again to be here.
And I think I got a case of the nerves. What's going on with me today? Or just lack of sleep.
Is
One
it
of the three.
maybe I'm intimidating? I've been told I can be intimidating. I'll try and relax too.
I've never been told that, and thank goodness, because I kind of scare myself. I don't want to scare others. So, in this color accounting world, and your role at Middlesex University, and also the curator of Accounting Cafe, you talk about this issue of why are we teaching accounting the same way we did basically in the 70s and 80s and 90s with jargon and just not really looking at what it really is. So can you expound on that?
Gosh, well, that's a kind of PhD, isn't it, Peter?
Well,
Um,
you're at a university, that's close enough.
well, if I look back at the way I was taught accounting, it was taught very much as a functional skill. Uh, and we were taught, you debit this and you credit that. And I remember asking questions like, well, why does that have a debit and this one has a credit? And you never really got a straight answer as to why certain things were debited and other things were credited. And I remember one teacher saying, listen, debit the window, credit the door, because the window was on the left of the classroom and the door was on the right. And that was about the extent of the explanation that you got. Um, and I think if we want to have meaningful learning, there has to be some kind of understanding of the why. It's not just about what and how, it's the why. Why are these things the way they are? Why is the accounting framework such as it is? Why are debits on the left and credits? I mean, there isn't a good answer to debits on the left, credits on the right, but why are there these two sides, and what do they mean? And I think being an accounting educator in the broadest sense of the word is an exploration of how to deliver that in engaging and meaningful ways for whoever is interested.
So how did you discover color accounting? I think I heard that you were having a conversation with a colleague and you got a little frustrated and went out on searching for something.
Well, I was my most of my teaching career has been spent at the other end of the student journey. Most of it has been spent with postgraduates or those just about to graduate. And I was getting a little bit sort of cobwebby with all of that. I was thinking, I need a bit of a change. So I asked my head of department, can I teach entry-level accounting? I'd really like to teach the first years before they know anything. That's what I want to teach. And she arranged that for me. And I, as part of my preparation, I started playing around with this idea. And I was talking to a colleague, and we were saying, look, there's just 5 boxes, isn't there? There's just 5 boxes. Really, this is just an organizing system, and you just have to decide which of the 5 boxes does something end up in when you're recording. And it was on the back of that that I started doing a bit of Googling, and I came across the color accounting learning system. And to be honest, it didn't mean a huge amount to me, but I thought, yes, that's what I meant. You know what it's like when you've had a good idea and you see somebody else got there first, it becomes yours. And so I said, well, that's what I meant, so therefore it's fair if I use that. So I downloaded that and I repurposed it. I sort of created some PowerPoint slides using the color accounting learning system accounting framework, took it into the classroom without really much sort of planning or preparation or thought. And then after a few weeks, this thing started getting under my skin. I was thinking, oh, no, there's more to this actually. This is orthodox. This actually isn't just a way of presenting it. This is it. And it really started growing on me. And so I gave Peter Frampton, our good friend, I gave him a call and I said, look, Peter, I've been using your accounting framework system and blah, blah, blah. And I've just nicked it, basically, stolen it, pinched it. And, he was very, very generous. He said, well, that's fantastic. That's really good news. So happy to hear that it's being used in classrooms. Here's a load more material. Let's keep the conversation going. And I'm now about to start my 4th year of running color accounting in quite a big undergraduate program. So generally speaking, we have about 500 students a year going through the color accounting program at Middlesex in its various campuses.
So that, having spent time in a higher education, how were you able to get color accounting embedded into the beginning accounting class that probably had thick books and this is the way we've always done it? How did you sell this to the university?
Well, you've worked at a university, haven't you, Peter? So these things have to be done with huge amounts of perseverance and stealth. Initially, we just used online materials, PowerPoint slides and whatever. I then persuaded my head of department, who's been amazingly supportive, to use the large majority of her learning and development budget for the department to buy color accounting packs. And we did that, I think, for 1 or 2 years. And then she said, look, Toby, we can't keep using the whole learning and development budget on your packs for your students. It's for the whole department. And again, we actually have quite a progressive and forward-looking library. I mean, as you know, libraries in universities are actually pretty important departments. They're headed by generally pretty high caliber people. They have huge budgets. So I went to the library and I said, look, this is what I want to do. And they said, great, that's fine. So now the library buys the packs, the library buys an electronic version of the book, The Joy of Accounting, and we're up and running and we're away. Every student, we post out a pack to them at the beginning of term when we're online, or they come on campus and they pick up their pack when they're with us. And we work through the pack during induction. I have about 2 or 3 hours over 2 days on each of those days, deliver the majority of the program, and then the rest of it is embedded. So we use it throughout our accounting program. So when we're doing financial analysis, we're still using the accounting framework. We're doing consolidations, we're using the accounting framework. So we have a kind of big start, and then it's got a long tail.
That's great. I mean, because it's only 5. It can only go 1 of 5 places, 1 of 5 buckets.
Yeah.
So I can still see myself when I saw the demonstration in Maryland, and Mark Robiliard was leading it, and Craig was there, and I started bouncing. I got a master's degree in accounting. I started bouncing in my chair, and Mark says, "You okay, Pete?" Like, you found the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Because same thing, it started growing. I mean, immediately it just started growing because no one had ever taught me in my years of accounting this way. And this is a simple way of looking at it and we just make it very complex because of the jargon and stuff. But they were able to cook it down to its most basic, simple needs and can explain it to, I think, to almost anybody who will just listen and get past that. Accounting has a very bad image. You know, students would rather have a root canal without Novocaine than take an accounting course. It's getting past that hurdle and not making it so fearful. And they've actually done it.
Yeah, they have, and it's really interesting to hear them talk about it because now they talk about it almost as if they've discovered it, which is like all great things, you know.
Right.
And you know, I've had time to sort of reflect quite deeply using it in an educational setting, and as you know, I've looked at various aspects of this from an educational psychological point of view, looking at you know, why it's so successful. And there are good pedagogical reasons why this works. We were talking about one earlier, which was this idea of dual coding, you know, which is a powerful educational tool that we can use where you combine pictures with words. And you know, the psychology of this is that words and pictures are stored differently in your brain, and therefore if you use words and pictures, it strengthens long-term learning, and it improves the speed at which people can pick up complex concepts. And I think that's something that's been very underrated in the world of accounting. What's the picture? Show me the picture. And I think one of the other issues with the color accounting learning system, it almost looks too simple. You sort of look at it and you kind of go, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I understand that. But once you use it, once you see people discovering accounting with it in commercial training courses, or I've taken it into high schools, or in universities, it's powerful. It's very, very powerful.
Yeah, I think I shared the story with you that a colleague of mine, I was explaining to her that I brought color accounting into my business model. So I told her I'm not going. What do you mean? I don't like accounting. I need to know it, but I don't like it. I'm terrible in math. You hear that all the time. And I made her a bet. Take the course, 2 hours a week for 3 weeks. So after the 6 hours, if you found absolutely no value, I'll refund your money plus 10%. So we went to the first 2 hours. Then at the beginning of the class of the second, at the beginning of the second class, I said, any comments? And I just thought, goes, I've woken up every morning thinking about my balance sheet. What in the hell have you done to me? For this person who really didn't think she could ever understand accounting, got
Yeah,
through the 6 hours and she wants to learn more. And she's blowing
yeah.
her mind away by one. And she started asking the right questions to her CPA, started asking the right questions to her financial planner, or saying, look, you speak in a foreign language. Tell me in English. Tell me in plain English what you're trying to say.
Yeah, yeah,
And she's like a whole world had just opened completely up.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But, but it's getting past that image of accounting. And you see it in action in the classroom. You see it in action all around. And you write about it. You speak about it. And if you want to, it's accountingcafe.org.
right.
Right. So go to accountingcafe.org and root around, and especially if you're an accounting educator, root around and look what Toby's and his group have been posting out there. And he does have monthly like seminars or webinars when he brings guests in to have this conversation online.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's difficult teaching accounting. You need a willing student. In commercial training, generally you've got willing students, not always. In higher education and high school settings, less so. So I think one of the tools that you need is enthusiasm. And when it comes to accounting, as people who know me, I mean, I know this is actually this is a bit sad to admit. I love accounting. You know, I'm very, very enthusiastic about it. Um, you know, one of the interesting things about accounting is that it's probably one of the most important social technologies we've ever invented. The other really interesting thing about accounting, according to an academic, Schmant Besserat, she's an archaeologist, funnily enough. I mean, this is typical. It actually takes an archaeologist to tell accountants how important accounting is. She was doing some work on these little small clay tokens. I don't know if you've come across her book Before Writing. It's a wonderful book. She came across these small clay objects, and they're spread all the way from Turkey all the way to what's modern day Syria, Iraq, Iran, right the way across the Levant. And she said there are just too many of them. They'd always been written off as like sort of, oh, they must have been play tokens, or maybe they were some kind of coinage or whatever. And she goes, no, 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 no. She posited that actually they were accounting tokens. So these tokens themselves, they date back about 10,000 years. So in her book, what she's saying is that these tokens reflected an archaic mode of concrete counting. So you'd have so many clay objects of a particular type that would represent so many sheep in a field, or cartons of oil, or whatever it was that they wanted to account. So what's extraordinary about accounting is that it probably predates literacy and numeracy. In fact, it was out of accounting that numeracy became a necessity, and it was out of numeracy that literacy became a necessity. So of all those massively important social technologies, reading, writing, arithmetic, it's the reckoning, the accounting that started. And that, I think that's pretty exciting. I think that's quite a fun thing to think about.
I am going to post this video on YouTube, and for those of you who are listening right now, go watch the video and listen to this conversation. His eyes are sparkling, and he's got this great big smile. He loves accounting, and I'll put it to you this way: if I was taught in my undergraduate program this view of it from the color accounting approach, I would have loved it as well. But I dropped out of accounting once I got to intermediate. And when I went back and got my master's degree in accounting, I had to take on the undergraduate. But I was never in love with it. I could do it because I could study. I studied a lot and I could take tests. But there was never that real love. But now that it's crystal clear, the power of it, what it can do, and it can be taught to pretty much anybody, I'm right there with you.
Also, Peter, the other thing is it's important that it's taught to everybody. This is it's no accident that these instruments of civilization came out of accounting, and now we kind of disregard it. It's a poor cousin to other disciplines. Kind of, oh, I don't know what to do. Oh, I'll do accounting. But actually accounting is fundamentally important to how you relate to the world. I mean, I'm not saying that our economic being is the only kind of being that matters, but actually if you have a good sense of accounting, you have a good sense of financial literacy. You don't really understand financial literacy. You don't really, pensions, interest rates, whatever it might be, unless you have a foundational understanding of accounting. And I think that, this accounting framework that we keep talking about has a really important application to applying it to yourself. Your personal assets, your personal obligations, and equity becomes your personal wealth. And what activities are you doing that are increasing your wealth, and what activities are you incurring that decrease your wealth? These are important social skills that everybody should be aware of. And so accessibility and enthusiasm and engagement are important things as part of making that come true.
Yeah, and color accounting does have a financial literacy arm to it, headed by Mark Billiard, who's trying to get that word out in essence.
He's getting accounting literacy out as a with the Accounting Literacy Foundation. Yeah.
And you're right. We talk about business acumen. You got great business acumen, but in order to have business acumen, you have to have a foundation of accounting acumen.
Right.
And then from that grows finance acumen.
Right.
Financial literacy. And once you have those two, then you can put the business acumen, because that constitutes pretty much everything else that you're viewing from the organizational perspective.
Right.
And we talk about we want to grow our business acumen. But most people don't know how to do that. And it really starts, just taking the time, starts with the basic foundation, then growing it into financial, understanding what, I've always said that numbers don't move by themselves. A 5's not sitting there one day, today I'm a 5, tomorrow will be a 7, then we'll go do a 3 the next day. No, people move the numbers. There's a story inside those numbers. We'll find it. Go tell the story. That's part of business acumen, the ability to tell that story to someone else who can understand what you're trying to communicate to them.
Well, I think that's something that you understand really well, Peter, isn't it? That actually, account is another word for story. If you ask somebody to give an account, you're asking them to tell the story. Um, and that kind of gets lost. Again, we restrict accounting. We're focused on accounting standards and whether it should be treated this way or that way. It's a functional or technical skill, and we've forgotten the art of storytelling. Financial statements tell stories, accounts tell stories. That's and that and what as you know, that's what humans love. Humans love stories.
Humans
So
love
everybody
stories.
can love accounting. If you love a story, you love accounting.
And especially if you're in a business, you're running a business, you're responsible for some part of the budget of your business. You need to learn the basics foundation of this in order to be one a good steward to the organization, because your responsibility as that steward of that organization is to grow the assets and keep those assets safe. Think
Yeah.
about that for a moment first, and then your responsibility, and then go in and understand so you can tell that story. It's a great story. I mean, think about I love teach. I used to love teach financial analysis. I didn't say financial statement analysis. I said financial analysis, which includes the financial statement, but it's also kind of that business acumen. We got to look at our industry, look at the trends, look at the economy, look what, and then now let's look at the numbers, and that becomes part of the decision making, but not the
Right.
sole part of the decision making.
Right.
You still have to understand those numbers in order to tell the story.
I was having this very conversation last night. I was with a small group of entrepreneurs, and one of them was asking me. They were saying, "So, how do you know when you're looking at a set of financial statements whether you're doing well or doing badly? What do you look at? What do you?" And that's actually a really good question. It's a
Hmm.
really, really good question, and it goes to the heart of why this is so important. Because if you don't really understand the accounts, if you don't really understand the financial statements, you're not going to be able to do any meaningful analysis. You're not going to be able to ask the right questions that require you to act to change the numbers in the way that you want them changed.
When somebody asks me that question, I go, it depends. They go, what do you mean it depends? It depends on how we did last year. How it depends on what we did 2 years ago. We compare. Once we have the numbers and we put them, we through the use of percentages to kind of balance a level playing field to get rid of the whole numbers, then okay, now I can tell you if I did better this year than last year or vice versa. But just on the face of it, just because we're showing a profit, but if I don't have that to compare to, I
Yeah,
I
and
really don't
also I
know.
think not necessarily just looking at historically, but comparing it to your vision or your intention. I run a program with entrepreneurs, under postgraduate entrepreneurship and innovation uh, program, and these students, they're very different to the type of student who want to become accountants, and they come with business ideas that are a little bit more mature. They've come with business ideas, they've come with a vision, and I actually take them through the color accounting process. And the output of their module is they have to create an Excel model which has a P&L, a balance sheet, and a cash flow statement that all integrate with a variables table. Sales go up 20%, costs go up 20%. Volumes do this, and everything must. Exactly what you're just saying. What actions might you take that's going to change the numbers? And remember, these are people who haven't had any financial background or
Hmm.
expertise. They all, 90% of them, manage to produce a working financial model. And what's really interesting about that exercise is they start looking at the financial statements not as some kind of historical thing, technical thing, but actually they're looking at it and saying, well, what do I want my business to become? They'll come to me and they'll, you'll look at their overheads and there's no overheads in there. They go, well, I'm not going to pay myself. I go, well, why are you doing it? Are you serving the business or is the business serving you? What's it for? Put some big overheads in. Now, what do you need? So you can actually help. A good understanding of accounting can help you create and actually materialize your vision. I'm not saying you can just sort of sit there and make a spreadsheet and you're going to become rich because you stuck it in a spreadsheet. But
Right.
but you can actually go through the analysis and say, what do I need in order to realize my vision? If you produce a load of numbers, you can look at it and say, that's never going to become my vision. I've got to do something here.
So, being a banker in a previous life, I had a number of entrepreneurs who would come to the bank and want to borrow money on a pro forma or a forecast that was, lack of a better term, malarkey. The assumptions were so, they were not even conservative. They weren't even, they were so liberal and trying to, they're very enthusiastic. They believe in what they do. But if they would know just the numbers and understand just a little bit better, then they can make a more realistic forecast on what they think they can do. Versus, I just picked this number here. Oh, I got that number here. I took another door, throw that one in there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Peter. We're a similar age. That's how we think business works, but apparently not anymore. you go you go in with a ridiculous business plan. You say, well, this is going to take $8 billion before we break even, and they go, oh yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
You know, well put.
I don't understand business valuation anymore. Students ask me, what's this business value? I go, I've got no idea. I've got no idea. And that's an important point. I love accounting. I'm an enthusiast for accounting, but it is defective. It's not good at measuring what the value of a business is. It's really not. And it's got much worse than it was when we were building factories and we were building widgets and we were turning things out, by the million as physical objects. Now we've moved into this sort of intellectual capital world or social capitalism. These it's very difficult. Accounting is a little bit behind.
You're giving it too much.
Yeah.
But from a business valuation perspective, it's very much behind. And just for the record, we're both 35 years old because you said we're similar age. But I remember, I don't know, it was back in late 90s, early 2000s. I was teaching this, no, it was middle 2000. I was teaching this financial statement analysis course in the Wall Street Journal. There was an article about how Playboy was undervalued. Because one, the logo is nowhere on that balance sheet because it's internally generated. They
Yeah.
couldn't put a cost on it. Number two, that between the artwork and everything else, they said this company is so underrated, but primarily because of the money. And how you, I mean, we record things on a historical basis. But now I have studied enough of IFRS that they will allow you to mark up your fixed assets to fair value, whatever that is.
Yeah, look, it's difficult. I mean, I think there are very deep-rooted problems with current financial reporting, because of the nature of assets. I mean, if you take 100 years ago, an asset would be a factory or a building or some plant or some machinery, whereas the most valuable asset that you might own today is an algorithm. Netflix says it gets 80% of its views from having suggested something that somebody watched the previous time around. So if you look at how did that algorithm get built? Well, it got built by programmers programming. Where is that all reflected? It's expensed. So all the value creation is now being expensed. There's a really interesting interview that I think Investors Chronicle did with Barak Lev, and he's an academic who believes quite strongly that financial reports have become irrelevant, and he talks about this quite extensively. This idea that value creation is now sitting within expenses. And again, going back to that conversation about how do you advise people, how do you tell people how to look at a set of financial statements, I think we've got to be really careful about advising people not to incur expenses. We, in our language, say expenses are transactions that reduce the value of equity. They're value sacrificing activities, if you like. But actually, if you're creating an algorithm or you're creating a social platform or you're creating a marketing platform, actually that's where you're creating value. It becomes very problematic. There's this fuzzy edge that sits between assets and expenses. And I'm not sure we've quite got to the answer to that yet.
Wow. Okay, you just blew my mind. Because that's deep accounting stuff there, and I'm following it, and I hear you, but The value is found in the expenses because we're not capitalized and put it as an asset on the balance sheet because
Well,
the standard setters said we can't.
well, look at it this way. Look at it this way. Going right back to the classroom, debit the window, credit the door. Why are assets and expenses on the same side of the accounting framework?
Because
You know,
uses
that's a good question, because expenses, surely they're using up value, and the assets are the value. So how come they sit? How come both are debits? How come they're both on the left side of the accounting framework? And one of the ways that you can sort of conceptualize that is to say, well, it's a fuzzy edge, isn't it? Is the value that I'm using creating more value, or is the value that I'm using being expended and going out the door? If somebody comes in and buys books and they take those books and they leave your shop happily with the books, sure, there's no value. But if you're paying a member of staff wages and salaries and whatever, but what they're doing is creating value, is that an expense, or have they created value for you? It's tricky.
but how do you measure that value that they've created?
Well, okay, but I mean, how do you measure that value? Well, the way accountants always measure things by a historical cost. You know, if you what's the value of the Netflix algorithm? Well, from a historical cost accounting point of view, the hours that every single programmer put into it at their hourly rate of pay, plus all the add-on costs. You know, that's how we value inventory. That's how we would value. You know, that's the value.
No, that's
It's not the value, but that's the
yeah,
historical cost.
that's the accountant's value of
Right.
the asset. It's not the market value of what it's generating back to the organization into the
Yeah, well, you know, this leads on to a whole new argument, doesn't it, about what are financial statements for? You know, I have a colleague who believes very strongly that balance sheets should reflect, as far as they can, the fair value of the assets within the business. My view is I'm quite happy with historical cost accounting. Let the stock market worry about
Mhm.
valuation. You know,
Right.
that's what the stock market's for.
And that's what the finance people do.
Yeah, yeah.
And but they have
Let's not disagree.
in order to keep them employed, they have to at least understand the basics of
Yeah,
accounting,
yeah,
and then how do we value it in the marketplace, which is it's like getting an appraisal on your house. Give me three.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
gonna take the middle one, and the appraiser's going, what do you want the number to be?
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of fuzziness there. However, I still contend that just having that basic knowledge from a business and personal perspective of, of accounting literacy, it will help you manage your investments better.
Undoubtedly.
It will
Absolutely, undoubtedly.
it will help you become a better steward to the organization because now you're able to make financial decisions on ideas or projects that you're considering to put into play and be able to articulate that to whichever decision maker is going to put the ultimate stamp of the okay on. But a lot of times now we go, well, we want this buy this new piece of machinery. What's the return on investment? What's what's that? No, we go, what's the ROI? I go, what's that? Return on investment. I'll ask again, what's that? Because I don't know. But just having that knowledge, and they can start to assess. Oh, maybe this isn't as good as investment as the salesperson is trying to tell me from the vendor company.
I completely agree, Peter. I mean, all sorts of decisions it can help you with. You come from a banking background. You know, sometimes entrepreneurs are too reluctant to take on debt, whereas actually taking on debt would be it would add fuel to their business, and they would get to their vision much faster than they would otherwise get it without the debt. You know, debt is not a bad thing. It can be badly managed,
Right.
but it's not inherently a bad thing. Um, and again, I think a fundamental understanding of accounting and the accounting framework and the balance of debt to assets and debt to equity and all of those good things can give entrepreneurs confidence and knowledge to make better decisions. Definitely.
And have better conversations with your CFO, or as I like to call them, the CFNO.
Well, of course, accountants are inclined to shroud themselves in a sort of priesthood, don't they? I mean, we haven't touched on language, but one of the reasons accounting is so inaccessible to people is because accountants quite like it that way.
Yeah.
If we're truly honest about it, accountants, we're not quite doctors, are we? Well, we're not
No.
exactly we're not lawyers. Well,
Yeah.
you might say that's a good thing. We're not veterinary surgeons, So accountants, I think, are inclined to sort of say, what we do is actually quite difficult. It's not that difficult. It really isn't that difficult.
Those ones who are doing it are a lot older than us, by the way, because they like to make them sound smart. They want to
It-
sound super, super smart because it's super, super easy. It's not about you. It's about them.
Well, the really stupid thing that accountants have done is that, what happens in other realms is they create their own vocabulary. So they'll come out with something like quantum physics or quarks or electrons or whatever it might be, a very specialized term. What accountants do is they take everyday language and give it a specialized meaning, like expense or income. And then all of a sudden everyone thinks, oh yes, I know what that is. And accountants go, no, 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 that's not what an expense is. And so we're taking very common language and using it in very specialized ways, which just adds to everybody's confusion. And quite a lot of accounting education is about unraveling those common terms and saying, okay, you think you know what an expense is, but actually this is how accountants are using that term. And that's why you can have more meaningful conversations with your accountant, because you actually understand how they're using language, common language, in a peculiar way.
You say depreciation to a non-accountant, they go, "Oh, that's the value I lose in my car when I drive off the new car lot." And the
Right.
accountant go, "No, no, no, it's a systematic allocation of an asset over time."
Right.
Oh, what the heck? What do you mean? Yeah, you're right. We've taken everyday language and made it difficult
Yeah.
as it relates to our world
Yeah.
versus just using
Yeah. Yeah.
somewhat
Yeah.
plain English. I mean, we in the color accounting, through that process, we rarely talk about debits and credits because that gets people all
Right.
turned around, and they start thinking, "No, it's but my checking account's the different way." Well, it goes from what perspective are you looking at this? You're looking at it from the organization's perspective.
Mhm.
Then your perspective will be the opposite, but those are just some of the many hurdles that we still have. But I think between the two of us, we have a lot of passion for this thing called accounting, especially the way it's presented from the color accounting learning system. We could go on, but I know that you need to get to a meeting here soon, so I don't want to keep you because it's a pretty big meeting, and I don't want to make you late because then you won't be on my podcast again.
I'd love to carry on, Peter. There's lots to talk about.
Well, we will carry on, my friend. I do appreciate your time. This has been an absolute blast, and I'm glad we finally met a couple months ago. And let's keep this conversation moving forward. And whatever I can do to help you in your quest, just ask.
Oh, thanks so much, Peter. I've enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
It has been. And is it tea time there yet, or is it
I'll be
not
putting the
quite?
kettle on before I go to my next meeting. But
Good.
but that's only because it's 10 before the hour. That happens every waking hour.
Perfect. Toby, have a great day. And I can't wait till someday our paths will cross in person versus over Zoom.
Can't wait. Be great. Thanks, Peter.